Welcome to another episode of Cadence Fishing TV. We had planned to go and fish on a river today, but all the rivers are flooded. And our fallback position was Packington Somers, which is near to Coventry. And it's a commercial fishery that I really like, and one that you're pretty much guaranteed to catch on a tough day like this. We've had some real cold frosts of late, and the water temperature must be really low. I spoke to John Birchall, the fishery manager, and he suggested we came and fished on Little Geary's. It's a lovely lake, and one where they've been catching some nice sized F1's even in these cold conditions. John suggested that we set up on this side of the lake, and I'm on peg 12. And the best method he told us to start on was a small maggot feeder. And that's what we've done. And so far, when we started this morning, it was really a bit of a wild morning. It was raining and it wasn't very pleasant at all. But I've been fishing for about an hour and I've had one nice carp around about £2, and I've started catching a few roach and skimmers. And we're hoping that the F1's that this lake's famous for are going to start feeding soon. But to be honest, on a cold morning like this, I'm just happy to get some bites and start building the swim up. Well, even though it is bitterly cold, the sun's come out now and it's really quite a beautiful day. And I just know from experience fishing on lakes like here at Packington in the winter, you've got to be patient, and the fish might not feed throughout the whole session like they do in the summer. You perhaps have to wait sometimes and be patient, and even on a very cold day like this you can catch some good nets of fish. So I'm just keeping everything really simple, and I'm just keep casting my small maggot feeder around about 3 meters from that island. John had told me that the fish had moved into the slightly deeper water, and that's where I'm starting, just on the slope down from that island. With time, maybe if the water temperature goes up and we fancy it, I might try a cast to the island and see if we can pick up some fish there, but at the moment it's just small fish that are intercepting the maggot. That's another small skimmer. John Birchall's been down to see how we're doing, and he suggested if I'm getting pestered by silverfish like those skimmers and roach, to shorten the hook length down. I'll persevere with it a few more casts, and if not, I'm going to shorten the hook length right down. That feels like another skimmer or roach. It's actually a rudd. The rod I'm using today is our CR10 10-foot feeder, and it's a beautiful rod when you're fishing on commercials like this. Obviously we're not casting far, I'm only casting about 20 meters out, and for short casts like that, this rod's absolutely great. You can see the blank is pencil thin and it's so lightweight, but it's got quite a lot of power. It's got a nice soft top and middle section with quite a lot of power in the butt, so if you were to hook a better carp, it's got plenty more than enough power to be able to cope with it. The rod's supplied with 3 carbon tips. There's 1, 1.5 and 2 ounce tip, and I'm using the ounce tip today, and that's been helpful to show up the small bites from the skimmers and roach. Obviously with the F1's and carp you don't tend to need to worry about that because they tend to pull the tip right round, but it's a great rod when it's hard fishing like this, when you're looking for a mixture of silverfish and carp. The reels are CS10 4000, which is magnesium, so it's very lightweight and it complements this lightweight rod beautifully. The line is 6-pound Daiwa sensor, which may sound a little bit heavy when you're fishing for silverfish, but I just find it works really well. It sinks well, and the great advantage is if we started to encounter some better carp, I've got the strength and robustness in the main line to be able to cope with them. At the moment the hook length I'm using is 0.12 millimeter, and to start with on a cold day like this, I think it's important to fish as fine as you dare. Obviously if we did start hooking some carp, then I'd step up, but at the moment this setup's working well. Just need some bigger F1's to turn up and start feeding. So the rig I'm using, this is actually a homemade cut down feeder. It's a Drennan block end feeder, and I've modified it by taking the side lead off, cutting the feeder down, and I have it running on a loop, and I use a drilled bullet as my lead. And for me, when I'm fishing a small maggot feeder like this on a hard day, I really like these. I use them on the rivers as well, and I've got quite a few made up. I've got it on a paternoster that's around about 6 inches in length, obviously attached to a snap swivel so I can change to different size feeders and different weight feeders. And I've got it running between 2 gripper stops so that I've got that bolt effect, which works so well when you're fishing for carp. And then at the moment I've got, I don't know, that must be about 2.5 foot hook length. So that's 012 hook length, and I've got a size 18 Kamasan B911 F1 hook. I've been fishing with double maggot or maggot and a pinky so far. So I mentioned that I'm not casting right over to the island at the moment. I'm just fishing down the slope, around about 3 to 4 meters back from the island. And a good trick I like to employ when I'm fishing like this is I'll actually put a little bomb on to start with and cast it right tight to the island and then clip up. So I've got the distance perfectly fixed if I were to want to cast to the island. And then I'll reel in 4 or 5 turns to where I'm going to be fishing my main line, and then I'll clip up again. So I've actually clipped up twice, and I think that on a hard day like this, when you're looking to maximise the swim and really try to catch some fish, clipping up's very, very important. So there you go, that's the clip. You can see the clip on these CS10 reels is round and it's spring loaded, so it's easy to clip the line up and it doesn't damage the line because it's spring loaded. And also that tip I told you about, you can clip up to 3 or 4 different distances, which is a real advantage. So when I'm casting and using the line fixed by the clip, I like to cast the feeder quite deliberately and stop the feeder in the air so that I can gently place it onto the water without too much of a splash. And then I like to put the rod down, and I haven't turned the handle or anything, so the feeder's settled in the same spot every time. And then as the line sinks, I'll gradually, very carefully, just tighten up to the tip. So I've got some tension on the tip and I can spot any bites very easily rather than having a slack line with no bent tip. But I'm not trying to sink the line in any way or tension the tip too much, because I don't want to move the feeder. I want the feeder to stay in exactly the same position. And in my mind, I'm thinking that those maggots now are escaping from the feeder and they're going to be concentrating in one area. Well, despite the cold, we're getting bites and indications off the silverfish really regularly, and I think that's good really. It's meaning that I'm casting really regularly and building the swim up, so it's almost like I'm float fishing. And it's a good adage to think about when you're feeder fishing is think float, fish feeder. So I'm not just chucking it out and leaving the feeder. I'm probably only leaving the feeder in at the moment for 3 or 4 minutes. A good tip, if you've let everything settle after casting and you've not had a bite, is to actually just very gently twitch the bait. I think sometimes on a cold day like this, you're either enticing the fish to maybe have a snap at the bait if it's been sitting watching it, or alternatively it's actually got the bait in its mouth and you're moving the feeder and connecting with the fish. But it's a tactic that's working well today, so I'm going to keep trying it, and I'm going to keep casting and keep catching these silver fish. So hopefully with time we might start to pick up some F1's and some carp. Well, the session's progressing now, and John explained to me that in the matches they've been catching the F1's quite late in the day. Well, we can see already the light's starting to fade, so that might just be the impulse for the F1's to start feeding. Let's hope so anyway. Well, that's definitely not a roach or a skimmer. It was a really good bite. And I'd actually gone a metre or two closer to the island. So hopefully we might have found where the F1's are hanging out. Even though it's cold, they're having a real good fight. Well, it looks like a decent F1, and they're famous here at Packington. They catch the F1's up to £6, and this one's fighting really well. But you can see how nicely the rod's bending and absorbing all the lunges of the fish. I'm taking my time because I want to make sure I get it. There we go. That is a nice F1 and really welcome on such a cold, hard day. Maybe you've never caught an F1 or know much about them, but they're actually a hybrid carp, a hybrid between a crucian and a common carp, and they've been bred specifically for commercials and don't grow to the great sizes of a normal common carp like a mirror carp or a bigger common carp. They tend to be stunted and grow up to around about £6, like I mentioned. Like all hybrids, they can't actually breed, and the reason they're so favoured on commercials like this is that they do feed throughout the year, even when the water temperature drops like it does now. So they're a very reliable fish. They're very hardy and hard fighting. Let's hope we can catch some more. And there's another one straight away. It's almost like someone's flicked a switch. And John did tell me that in the matches they've been having to wait till sort of 2:30 in the afternoon before they start to catch the F1's. Must be something to do with a slight increase in the temperature or maybe a change in the light, but it's definitely proving the same today. There we go. There's another one, a bit smaller this time. Some of them are much more similar to a crucian in their shape and size. This one's definitely a bit chunkier. Well, those two quick F1's I caught past my initial feed, further over towards the island. And I know a lot of friends that fish the matches here and on similar commercials where they catch F1's explain that you need to sometimes in the winter cast around and find where the F1's are hiding out. It sort of goes against what you normally learn, you know, about keeping everything tight and accurate and keep dropping it in one spot. They're definitely curious creatures, the F1's, but we're certainly glad of them on a cold day like this. There's another one. Well, we're starting to catch some lovely F1's now, and I think that's just reward for coming out on such a cold day. So I mentioned the design of these cut down feeders with the drill bullet at the base, and I really like them because they cast really straight, almost like a bullet, and it means that you can fish really accurately, but they don't make a big splash when they land in the water, and I think that's important when you're fishing hard days in relatively shallow water like we are today. Well, I've been trying a variety of maggot hook baits, but I've just had that run of F1's on double red maggot on the 18 hook. And you can see that I like to hook them through the tail rather than the conventional way of hooking them through the blunt end. It just helps to prevent the maggots from doubling over. But I've been trying pinkies as well, and fluoro pinkies can be an absolutely fantastic bait for F1's in the winter. A great advantage of these cut down feeders when you're fishing in the winter is obviously you're reducing the amount of maggots that you're feeding every cast. This one takes about 20 maggots to fill it up to capacity, and I think that's really key in the winter. You don't want to overfeed the fish, and by constantly casting out those small feeders, you're gradually building the swim up. I suppose today I'm probably going to end up only using about a pint of maggots. A good tip, especially when you're feeder fishing in the winter, is to every so often just try a straight bomb like that. Means you can cast it around your peg to a different spot, try and search out some more fish, and also maybe just trick the fish that are getting used to the feeder, and just sort of trick them onto taking your hook bait. Like I mentioned earlier on, twitching the bait can be a great tactic, and it's something that I'll keep trying every so often. So I've just cast the bomb out and I'm just moving it ever so slightly. Sometimes that movement can just result in a bite. Alright. Well, I've had 14 F1's and that first mirror cart, and the light's starting to fade now, so I think we're going to call this the last one. Well, there we go. Thank goodness for F1's in the winter. We've had some great sport today. Well, there we go. What a cracking net of fish. Just shows what a great method the maggot feeder can be when the going gets tough. Thanks for watching.